They sent an infertile alien princess to a human as a cruel joke. She came back pregnant with child. The galaxy had always been cruel, but few jokes could match the one that the High Council of the Conquered had planned. Princess Vaylith, heir to one of the oldest and most respected alien dynasties, had been born with a flaw that no one dared discuss openly. Her people had perfected their bloodlines over thousands of years, each generation more refined than the last. And yet, despite all the genetic manipulation and surgical interventions, Vaylith had arrived in the world as something the Council considered incomplete. She was infertile. In a society where royal worth was measured by the ability to continue the lineage, Vaylith was nothing more than a delicate decoration. She had the grace of her ancestors, the intelligence expected of a princess, and a mind that could rival even the brightest scholars. Yet for all that, she was quietly ignored. Ministers and nobles would avoid conversations that touched upon marriage, heirs, or the future of her house. Even her closest advisors spoke to her in hushed tones, careful not to awaken the shadow of disappointment that clung to her presence. It was during a particularly dull session of the Conquered's political planning that the nobles devised a plan. The galaxy was vast, full of species with quirks and weaknesses. Humans, the Council decided, were perhaps the most amusing of them all. Their biology was primitive, their societies chaotic, and their genetic makeup crude by interstellar standards. No human had ever been able to match the sophistication of an advanced species. Sending Vaylith to one of their colonies, they thought, would provide endless amusement. She would be seen as the Grand Princess, a figure of awe, only to fail spectacularly when confronted with the weak, inconsistent, and utterly unpredictable human species. They presented it as an honor, a cultural exchange mission. Vaylith would travel to the edge of human-controlled space, ostensibly to study their customs and evaluate their scientific progress. In reality, it was a trap, a stage set for humiliation. The Council assured themselves it would be amusing to see the princess, the one who could not fulfill her most basic biological duty, mocked by beings far inferior to even the lowest-ranking alien worker. Vaylith herself was skeptical. She had been trained to navigate court intrigue, to remain calm under pressure, and to endure the subtle cruelties of nobility. But this mission felt different. It was not an assignment of power, study, or diplomacy. It was a punishment masquerading as opportunity. She accepted it quietly, her expression unreadable. Even she could not guess how this journey would change her life, and the galaxy itself, forever. The human colony awaited her arrival with none of the pomp or ceremony of her homeworld. The ships that met her vessel were small and utilitarian, their designs simple but functional. On board, the humans themselves were unlike any species Vaylith had ever encountered. They were unpredictable, moving with energy and confidence that bordered on recklessness. Their eyes held curiosity, and their smiles were not calculated for political gain, but seemed to come from a place of genuine emotion. Among them was a human named Elias Ward. He was an engineer, tasked with assisting Vaylith during her stay. He had no rank, no bloodline, and no expectations beyond ensuring her needs were met and helping her understand human technology. From the moment Vaylith met him, she sensed something unusual. He looked at her as if she were a person, not a princess, not a project, and certainly not a joke. There was no fear in his eyes, no deference, no calculation, only honesty. At first, Vaylith was defensive. She had spent her life guarded, wrapped in layers of protocol and expectation. Humans, she quickly discovered, had no interest in protocol beyond what was necessary for survival. They asked questions directly, spoke plainly, and disregarded titles in ways that were shocking. Vaylith found herself frustrated at first, irritated by their lack of formality and the casual way they questioned her. But the irritation soon gave way to fascination. Humans were resilient in ways she had never encountered. Where her people relied on genetics and preparation to ensure success, humans relied on improvisation. Where her people designed every aspect of life for perfection, humans survived through creativity, adaptability, and sheer unpredictability. She watched as Elias repaired a broken energy conduit with a combination of parts from different machines, none designed to fit together, yet somehow functional. He explained his process to her with pride, shrugging off the fact that it would never be considered elegant by alien standards. Vaylith could not help but be intrigued. She began to take notes, observing everything, the way humans reacted to stress, the way they interacted socially, even the way they slept. She ran scans, subtle and unobtrusive, checking for biological irregularities. What she saw puzzled her. Humans were messy, unpredictable, but they thrived in environments that should have been hostile to their kind. And more importantly, they seemed to affect her body in ways she could not explain. Her first night on the colony, Valeth could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her quarters, analyzing data she had collected during the day. Her sensors had shown hormonal fluctuations, biochemical responses that were entirely unaccounted for in her medical history. She tried to dismiss them as anomalies, malfunctions, or errors in her equipment. But deep down, a tiny spark of hope flickered. Something impossible, something her people had deemed biologically impossible. Over the next few days, she spent more time with Elias, learning not just about human technology, but about human society, about their stories, their fears, and their triumphs. He spoke of survival against impossible odds, of generations of humans thriving in harsh environments without genetic engineering, without the careful planning that her people relied on. And slowly, Valeth began to see what her people could not, that humans were not weak. They were adaptable, they were unpredictable, they were extraordinary. The conquered, of course, remained unaware. Their communication was sporadic, updates sent to Valeth more as reminders of her place than genuine concern for her welfare. They expected reports of failure, of her frustration, of her humiliation. Instead, she submitted detailed analyses, not of human inferiority, but of human ingenuity. Every note she sent quietly challenged their assumptions, though they remained blind to it. Valeth herself struggled with what she was feeling. Her mission had been designed to expose her weakness, to make her realize her uselessness. Instead, she found herself inspired, invigorated, and most confusingly, alive. She had never known such freedom. On her homeworld, every action was scrutinized, every word weighed for consequence. Among humans, she discovered spontaneity, laughter, and warmth. And in Elias, she discovered trust. Not blind trust, not politically motivated trust, but genuine human trust, the kind that defied calculation. One evening, she accompanied Elias to observe a human farming method designed for low-resource environments. The fields were primitive by her standards, with soil enrichment processes that would horrify any conquered scientist. Yet the humans worked tirelessly, adjusting, experimenting, failing, and trying again, and they succeeded. The crops thrived, the methods improved over time, and Valeth could not deny the efficiency that emerged from such chaos. She realized that the galaxy had underestimated humans not because they were weak, but because they operated by rules that no other species understood. The realization was startling. If humans were capable of adaptation at this level, what else could they achieve? What potential lay hidden in a species that the conquered dismissed as inferior, unworthy, and biologically flawed? Valeth found herself asking questions that were dangerous to ask aloud. She began to imagine a future that was not dictated by the strictures of her bloodline, a future where limitations might be challenged and overturned. It was during these observations that she first noticed something strange within herself. Subtle at first, a faint change, a ripple of sensation that she could not explain. Her sensors, calibrated to detect even the smallest physiological shifts, confirmed her suspicion. Her body was responding in a way that contradicted everything she had been told by a lifetime of medical certainty. Valeth tried to ignore it, afraid of what it might mean. She had been trained to accept the boundaries set by her biology. To imagine that those boundaries could be broken was dangerous. And yet, every time she spent time among humans, the changes became more pronounced. Her body, long declared incapable of fulfilling the most basic royal duty, seemed to be awakening. She shared none of this with Elias, not yet. She did not understand it herself, and fear kept her silent. But the quiet excitement she felt was impossible to hide entirely. There was a new energy in her movements, a heightened awareness, a sense of possibility she had never known. The cruel joke of the conquered, designed to humiliate her, was turning into something she could not have imagined. Humans, oblivious to the broader implications, continued their work, their play, their lives. They laughed easily, helped each other without expectation, and thrived despite the chaos of their imperfect world. Valeth watched and learned, feeling both awe and fear. She was beginning to understand a truth that would shake the foundations of her society. Humans were not limited by what the galaxy believed. Their strength lay not in perfection, but in imperfection, adaptability, resilience, and unquantifiable unpredictability. As she lay awake each night, Valeth pondered her future. The council expected failure. Her people expected humiliation. Even she had once expected disappointment. But among humans, she began to see a different path, one that defied expectation and challenged the authority of the galaxy itself. And within her, an impossible question began to form, a question that would not stay quiet no matter how she tried. Could something truly impossible occur in the presence of humanity? Could the very foundations of what she had been told to accept be rewritten? The answer, though unspoken, hovered just beyond reach. And it waited. Valeth's days on the human colony grew longer, not because the work was exhausting, but because the humans refused to allow life to be simple. Each day brought new problems, new unexpected results, and new opportunities to witness how a species thought inferior could thrive in ways no advanced civilization had predicted. Elias guided her through tasks that would have seemed trivial to Valeth's people, but every lesson revealed layers of complexity. He showed her how humans repaired their machines with ingenuity, improvising components where none existed. He explained how their social structures, though chaotic, created resilience that even the most advanced alien bureaucracies lacked. And through it all, he treated Valeth as an equal, never condescending, never treating her like a fragile artifact. At first, Valeth resisted. Her training had taught her to measure everything, to see order and predictability as the only forms of security. Humans ignored these rules. They laughed in the middle of crises, shared resources without hesitation, and solved problems through trial and error rather than careful planning. Valeth watched one engineer fix a failing energy grid by combining 3 separate, incompatible systems. It was reckless. It was chaotic, and somehow it worked. Humans thrived where her people would have failed, and Valeth began to notice something remarkable. Her body was responding in ways that no medical report or genetic study could explain. Subtle at first, an increase in vitality, a shift in her hormones, but undeniable. She had spent her life believing that certain things were impossible, that her own biology was a limit she could never cross. Among humans, those limits were quietly dissolving. She did not speak of it to Elias, not yet. She did not fully understand it herself, and fear made her cautious. But she noticed the difference in small ways. She slept less and felt rested. She recovered quickly from physical activity that would have exhausted her on her homeworld. And there were other, stranger signs. Fluctuations in her biochemistry that seemed to respond to the humans themselves, their proximity, their energy, even their laughter. The colony itself was a marvel of improvisation. Humans had settled on a barren planet with limited resources, hostile weather, and unpredictable wildlife. Valeth observed how they built their homes from recycled materials, created water systems from local rivers, and generated energy using combinations of solar, wind, and manual methods. Every solution was imperfect, yet resilient. Each system had fail-safes that were improvised in real time, and it worked. Elias introduced her to the farmers, scientists, and builders of the colony. They were a ragtag group, far from the sleek efficiency Valeth was used to. Yet they were brilliant in ways her people never valued. They took risks, adapted quickly, and thrived because failure was always a possibility, but never a stopping point. One afternoon, Valeth accompanied a human botanist into a greenhouse designed to test plant survival under harsh conditions. The scientist explained that their goal was not to create perfect plants, but to observe and adapt, to make adjustments whenever a system failed. The greenhouse was messy, with mismatched equipment and irregular plant growth, but the results were astonishing. Crops that should have died under the planet's harsh sun thrived, and those that failed taught lessons that allowed the next batch to flourish. Valeth was captivated. In her own world, failure was intolerable. Every experiment was controlled to avoid error, every action measured to ensure predictable results. Humans embraced uncertainty. They did not fear mistakes. They did not seek perfection. They sought survival, innovation, and growth. And in that unpredictability lay their strength. She began to spend more time studying humans, running tests on herself in private. She noticed that her body was responding in ways her own species had deemed impossible. Her reproductive system, once considered permanently inactive, was showing biochemical activity she could not explain. She measured hormone fluctuations, cellular growth, and changes in her energy levels. All readings defied the known laws of her people's biology. Valith felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. She had spent her entire life confined by expectation, defined by what she could not do rather than what she could. Now, in the presence of humans, something previously impossible seemed to be occurring, and yet she dared not speak of it. If the colony's humans discovered it, they would be as puzzled as she was. If her own people discovered it, they might react with anger, fear, or worse. Despite her caution, Valith could not avoid the subtle bonds forming between her and the humans around her. Elias, in particular, seemed to embody their strengths. He was endlessly patient, inventive, and willing to risk failure to achieve success. He treated her not as a princess or a specimen, but as a partner. Slowly, Valith began to trust him. Not fully and not blindly, but in a way that her people had never allowed her to trust anyone. The trust grew in small moments. Elias taught her to repair simple machines, to understand human biology, and to navigate the unpredictable social structures of the colony. They shared meals and conversations that had nothing to do with duty or politics. Valith found herself laughing for the first time in years, discovering a joy that had been denied to her by the rigid expectations of her homeworld. And yet, the fear remained. Every time she sensed the changes in her body, every time she felt her biology responding to the humans around her, a part of her recoiled. This was forbidden, dangerous, and impossible. Her people would never forgive such a violation of their genetic laws. And if the conquered discovered it, the consequences could be catastrophic. One evening, Valith stood on the edge of the colony's observation deck, looking out at the barren landscape beyond. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the human structures. She felt a strange calm, a sense that the universe itself was shifting in subtle ways she could not yet comprehend. Humans had taught her to see potential where none was expected, to embrace the unpredictable, and to survive in the face of impossible odds. Elias joined her carrying a small device that measured atmospheric conditions. He did not speak at first, letting the silence stretch between them. When he did, his words were simple but profound. "You see it too, don't you? Humans survive because we don't know what we're not supposed to do. We fail, we adapt, and we keep moving. It's not elegant, it's not perfect, but it works." Valith nodded, unsure if she could explain the storm of emotions inside her. "It changes everything," she admitted quietly. Elias smiled. "Sometimes all it takes is a little chaos to find the truth." Her days became filled with both wonder and tension. The human colony continued to challenge her assumptions at every turn. She studied their methods, learned their habits, and observed their interactions. And with each passing day, the impossible seemed less improbable. Her body continued to change subtly, responding in ways that her people would have labeled miraculous, impossible, or heretical. One afternoon, Valith accompanied a team of engineers on a construction project. The humans were building a water filtration system using components scavenged from old machinery. She watched as Elias instructed them, improvising solutions on the spot. Pipes were rerouted, pumps adjusted, and sensors repurposed. The system was far from perfect, but it worked. And Valith realized that human ingenuity was not limited by rules, by calculations, or by fear of failure. It was limited only by imagination, and humans had plenty of that. Later, she retreated to her quarters, running more tests on herself in secret. Her scans revealed something extraordinary. Her reproductive system, long considered dormant, was showing signs of activity. Hormones fluctuated, cellular structures responded, and biological processes that should have been impossible were occurring. Valith's heart raced. She had always believed that her infertility was absolute. Now, in the presence of humans, it was no longer so. Fear mixed with a growing sense of hope. The changes were subtle but undeniable. Valith could not yet predict the outcome, and she dared not imagine it fully. Yet the realization that the conquered had underestimated both her and humanity filled her with a quiet determination. If humans could survive, adapt, and thrive where others would fail, perhaps even she could defy the expectations placed upon her. The days passed in a blur of learning, observation, and subtle changes. Valeth became increasingly aware of the bond forming between herself and the humans around her. Their energy, resilience, and unpredictability were transforming not only her understanding of the galaxy but her own biology. And in the quiet moments, when she was alone with her thoughts, she began to wonder what might be possible if the impossible were allowed to occur. She did not yet know the full implications. She did not know how far her body could respond or what it might produce. But one thing was certain. The cruel joke of the conquered, designed to humiliate her, was turning into something extraordinary. Among humans, limits were being rewritten, and Valeth, once defined by her inability, was beginning to discover a power she had never imagined. The universe, in its vast indifference, had given her a chance, and for the first time in her life, Valeth felt that she might not waste it. Valeth had begun to feel changes in her body that she could no longer ignore. Subtle shifts had become undeniable. Biochemical readings that should have remained static were fluctuating. Hormones, once dormant, showed activity. Her reproductive system, once considered permanently inactive, was now quietly stirring. She tried to deny it at first, convincing herself that it was a sensor error, an anomaly, or the result of stress. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something impossible was happening. She kept her discovery secret. Humans were not yet aware of what was occurring, and she had no intention of alarming them with a situation that defied every law of biology in the galaxy. But the knowledge weighed on her, filling her days with both wonder and fear. Every interaction, every moment spent among humans, carried the potential to amplify the impossible. She studied them more closely, observing how their presence affected her body. Each laugh, each touch, each shared moment seemed to resonate in ways that no alien technology could explain. Elias noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, though he could not have understood the cause. Valeth was quieter than usual, more contemplative, yet there was an energy about her that had not been there before. She moved with purpose, observed with intensity, and occasionally allowed herself a smile that lingered longer than was customary for a princess. Elias, ever perceptive, remarked on it lightly one evening as they repaired a damaged generator. "You seem different," he said, handing her a spanner. "More alive." Valeth paused, measuring her words. "Perhaps humans have a way of showing life where others do not," she replied. It was not a lie, though it was vague enough to hide the full truth. She could not yet reveal what was happening, not to him, not to the colony, and certainly not to the conquered. The human colony itself continued to flourish despite the harsh environment. Valeth observed how they adapted to every challenge, turning scarcity into innovation and danger into opportunity. She marveled at their resilience. Where advanced species relied on precision, humans relied on improvisation. Where her people sought perfection, humans embraced imperfection. And where other species would have faltered under stress, humans thrived. It was during one of her routine scans that the impossible became undeniable. Valeth had been conducting tests quietly, examining her body's response to human proximity and environmental factors. The readings, at first subtle, were growing more pronounced. Cellular activity, hormone production, and metabolic changes indicated that something extraordinary was occurring. She paused, staring at the data in disbelief. She was pregnant. The word itself was impossible. No alien doctor, no geneticist, no laboratory could have predicted this outcome. Interspecies reproduction had been deemed incompatible between humans and her kind. The conquered had made that certainty a cornerstone of their science. And yet here it was, glowing clearly on her monitors, undeniable proof that life had begun where none should have been possible. Valeth felt a surge of emotions she had never experienced before. Fear, wonder, excitement, terror. The galaxy would never forgive this. The conquered would see her as a threat, an anomaly to be destroyed or exploited. Yet there was also a quiet, powerful joy, proof that humans, a species dismissed as weak and primitive, had unlocked a possibility that no one else could. She could not keep this secret forever. Someone would notice the changes, and if the conquered discovered the truth, the consequences would be catastrophic. Yet the idea of telling the humans filled her with conflicting emotions. They were unaware of their own potential to affect her body in such a profound way. She did not want to frighten them, nor did she want them to be used as pawns in the galactic politics that now hung over her life. Over the following days, Valeth continued her observations. She avoided physical contact where possible, yet she could not avoid the humans entirely. Elia's, in particular, was a constant presence, guiding her, teaching her, and sharing the simplicity and complexity of human life. And with each interaction, her body responded. The impossible pregnancy continued to develop, subtle but undeniable, proof that life could bridge the impossible gap between species. Valith struggled with isolation. She wanted to confide in someone, but who could understand? Humans did not have the knowledge to interpret her condition. Her own people would react with fear and anger. The weight of secrecy pressed on her, and she found herself retreating into her thoughts more often, analyzing, calculating, and preparing for the inevitable revelation. The first challenge came when the Conquered demanded a status report. Valith's carefully worded message described the human's ingenuity, adaptability, and surprising resilience. It made no mention of the pregnancy. The council would likely find the observations tedious and unimpressive, but Valith knew that if they suspected the true nature of her condition, they would act swiftly and without mercy. Despite her fear, she could not suppress a growing sense of admiration for the humans. They had unwittingly accomplished what no advanced species could. They had interacted with her in a way that defied biology, created the conditions for life where it should have been impossible, and remained blissfully unaware of the magnitude of their impact. One night she confided in her personal logs, recording the sequence of events, the changes in her body, and her observations of human behavior. Her words were cautious, yet filled with awe. She documented the subtleties of their influence, the way proximity affected hormone production, how shared laughter triggered metabolic responses, and how emotional bonds seemed to awaken previously dormant processes. She recorded everything, knowing that one day, this knowledge might change the galaxy's understanding of life itself. Valith's solitude was broken when Elias noticed her growing hesitation. He observed her more closely, sensing the tension she carried but unaware of its cause. He approached her one evening as she stared at the colony's night sky, the twin moons casting pale light across her face. "You've been quiet," he said softly. "More than usual, something is bothering you." Valith hesitated. Could she tell him, should she? The risk of revelation was immense, but the trust she had begun to place in him was stronger than her fear of exposure. She chose her words carefully, speaking in metaphors, half-truths designed to convey her emotions without revealing the impossible. "The universe is stranger than I imagined," she said. "There are forces at work here I cannot explain, things that defy what I was taught to believe." Elias frowned, curiosity piqued. "You mean humans?" Valith nodded slightly, choosing her words carefully. "Humans are more powerful than the galaxy realizes, not in strength, not in weapons, but in ways that cannot be measured. They adapt, they endure, they create possibilities." Elias smiled, though his eyes remained thoughtful. "That's all we've ever done. We survive, we try. We fail and we try again. That's how we grow. That's all we know." Valith studied him, her heart pounding. Could it be that this simple, unpredictable species was capable of altering the course of life itself? Could humans, dismissed and underestimated, hold the power to defy even the most advanced biology? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. In the following days, the pregnancy continued, invisible yet undeniable. Valith's body adjusted, her systems stabilizing in ways that no scientist could have predicted. She began to understand that the human influence was not just biological, it was emotional. Her connection with Elias, with the colony, with the warmth and unpredictability of human life, was integral to the process. The impossible had become real, and it was tied to the very essence of humanity itself. Valith realized that she was standing on the edge of a revelation that could change everything. The Conquered, if they learned of her condition, would see humans as dangerous, unpredictable, and perhaps even a threat to galactic order. Entire systems could mobilize to contain, exploit, or destroy the humans she had come to admire. And yet, the potential for change, for unity, for redefining the limits of life itself, was immense. She began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The Conquered would demand answers. She would have to navigate the delicate balance between secrecy and revelation, between fear and opportunity. And through it all, she carried the proof of humanity's hidden power within her. As the sun rose over the barren landscape, Valith stood on the observation deck once more. The colony sprawled below, chaotic and vibrant, full of life and ingenuity. She felt a profound respect for the species she had come to understand, a species that had unknowingly defied every expectation of the galaxy. And she felt the first stirrings of the life inside her. Small, impossible, undeniable. A testament to the strength, adaptability, and hidden potential of humanity. Valeth knew that her journey had only just begun. The revelation of the pregnancy would change everything, her own life, the fate of the humans, and perhaps the entire galaxy. She could not predict the consequences, but she understood one thing clearly. The impossible had occurred, and humanity had made it possible. The Council had sent her as a joke, expecting humiliation and failure. Instead, she had returned the favor with a truth they could never have imagined. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not insignificant. Humanity, in its chaos, unpredictability, and resilience, had created a miracle. Valeth's thoughts turned to the future. She would have to protect the child, protect the humans, and navigate the treacherous waters of interstellar politics. But she also knew that, for the first time in her life, she was not powerless. She carried within her a living proof that humans could achieve what no other species could. And that knowledge, more than anything, filled her with a quiet, unshakable determination. The impossible had been achieved. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, still unaware of the full extent of its power, continued to live, to adapt, and to thrive. The conquered did not wait long before demanding Valeth's immediate return. Her reports had already arrived, carefully composed to hide the truth. They noted human ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience, but nothing of the impossible pregnancy that was quietly growing within her. The Council, confident in their assumptions, dismissed the reports as minor curiosities and prepared a fleet to escort her back. Valeth knew that leaving the colony openly would invite disaster. The humans were unprepared for the scrutiny and suspicion of the galaxy's most powerful authorities. If the conquered discovered the pregnancy before the child was protected, the consequences could be catastrophic. The child could be studied, exploited, or even destroyed. She could not allow that. She convened a private meeting with Elias. He listened quietly as Valeth explained the situation, carefully avoiding the full details of her condition. She emphasized the danger posed by the conquered and the need to protect the colony. Elias, though shocked by the implications, understood immediately. Humans had faced overwhelming threats before and had always found a way to survive. This, he realized, would be no different. The preparations began in secrecy. The colony mobilized, using every resource at their disposal to shield Valeth from discovery. They reinforced the perimeter, disguised communications, and created hidden escape routes. Humans worked tirelessly, improvising solutions with the same ingenuity that had allowed them to thrive in this harsh world. Valeth watched, amazed at their efficiency. They were messy, chaotic, and imperfect, but unstoppable. When the conquered fleet arrived, the humans met them not with weapons, but with calm determination. Valeth stood on the observation deck as the alien ships approached, their hulls glinting in the twin suns. She felt fear, but also a sense of pride. Humanity was about to face a challenge that no one in the galaxy had anticipated, and she knew they would rise to it. The conquered's envoys demanded immediate contact. Valeth complied, meeting them in a neutral chamber aboard the colony's largest station. The envoys, adorned in ceremonial armor and carrying the authority of centuries, expected obedience and submission. They did not expect confidence, ingenuity, or defiance. Valeth spoke carefully, her words measured but firm. She described the humans' achievements, their ability to survive in impossible conditions, and their unique adaptability. She did not reveal the full truth, but she hinted at potential that the conquered could not comprehend. The envoys exchanged skeptical glances, convinced that the princess was attempting to justify human inadequacy. That was when the first demonstration occurred. Valeth requested the envoys witness a human solution to a critical engineering problem. A section of the colony's energy grid, deliberately destabilized for the demonstration, failed in a manner that should have caused a system-wide blackout. The humans, however, repaired it within minutes, using a combination of scavenged parts, improvisation, and teamwork that no alien technology could replicate. The envoys watched in stunned silence as the grid stabilized, lights flickering back on, energy flowing seamlessly despite the chaos. Valeth allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The humans had done what the conquered believed impossible. They had adapted, survived, and solved a problem that no advanced species could handle without flawless equipment and precise calculations. Elia stood beside her, quietly proud. Valith noticed the subtle energy in the air, the confidence of humans who had faced impossible odds before and succeeded. The conquered envoys had underestimated them, and it was becoming painfully clear. The confrontation escalated when a high-ranking envoy questioned the princess directly. "Your reports exaggerate," he said. "Humans are weak, untested, and unworthy of attention. They cannot survive in environments beyond primitive worlds. Any claim otherwise is absurd." Valith's eyes met his. "You have judged them by your standards," she replied. "You assume that order, perfection, and predictability define strength. You are wrong. Strength is adaptability. Strength is creativity. Strength is the ability to survive where rules fail and perfection cannot exist. Humans possess this strength in ways you cannot imagine." A murmur ran through the envoys. They had never encountered such bold defiance from one of their own royalty. Valith's confidence, paired with the quiet brilliance of the humans around her, created a tension that none could ignore. Meanwhile, the pregnancy continued, subtle yet undeniable. Valith felt it as a quiet pulse within her, a reminder of the impossible reality she carried. The conquered would eventually demand inspection, and she knew that concealment would become increasingly difficult. She could not hide the truth forever, yet she also could not allow the child to be exposed to those who saw it as a threat or anomaly. As the standoff continued, Valith made a decision. She would not retreat. She would not submit to the assumptions of a council that had spent centuries underestimating humanity. Instead, she would demonstrate that humans were capable of more than anyone believed. Not through violence, but through proof, through action, ingenuity, and resilience. The humans of the colony began to display their strengths more openly. Engineers solved problems that had stumped alien technology for years. Farmers grew crops in conditions that should have been fatal. Scientists created energy solutions that defied expectation. Every success was a quiet rebellion against the galaxy's assumptions, and Valith was at the center of it. Tension mounted as the conquered demanded an immediate demonstration of the humans' abilities. Valith and Elias orchestrated a series of challenges, each designed to show adaptability rather than raw power. The humans responded with creativity, improvisation, and calm determination. The envoys watched, increasingly unsure of their own judgments. One envoy, clearly frustrated, demanded proof that the humans' abilities were not temporary, not reliant on luck or circumstance. Valith turned to Elias and nodded. He understood immediately. A demonstration would be arranged that would leave no room for doubt. The humans worked tirelessly, combining technology, strategy, and ingenuity to create a sustainable solution to a simulated disaster scenario. Energy systems, water distribution, food production, and environmental controls were tested in real time. Failures occurred as they always did, but the humans adapted, improvised, and succeeded. By the end of the demonstration, the conquered envoys were forced to acknowledge what they had witnessed. Humans could survive where others would fail. Humans could solve problems that seemed impossible. Humans were not weak, they were extraordinary. Valith felt a surge of pride and relief. Humanity had shown its true potential. The impossible pregnancy remained a secret, but its presence strengthened her resolve. She carried within her proof of what humans could achieve, and she would protect it at all costs. The standoff was not without risk. The conquered's envoys demanded answers, explanations, and assurances. Valith deflected their inquiries, emphasizing human adaptability and ingenuity while carefully avoiding direct mention of the pregnancy. She sensed that the envoys were beginning to respect the humans, if only grudgingly. Their skepticism had been challenged, their assumptions shaken. Elias stood by her, offering quiet support and guidance. Valith realized that the bond she had formed with him was more than friendship. It was a partnership. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between revealing the human's strengths and protecting the secret that could change the galaxy forever. As the days passed, Valith observed the humans growing more confident. They had faced scrutiny, challenge, and doubt, and had emerged stronger. Their resilience was undeniable. They did not rely on perfection, on advanced technology, or on the rules of the galaxy. They relied on themselves, their creativity, and their ability to adapt. The conquered began to retreat from outright hostility. The envoys were forced to acknowledge that humans were not mere primitives, but a species capable of influencing even the most advanced civilizations. Valeth's carefully orchestrated demonstrations had proven the point. Humanity's power lay not in domination, but in survival, ingenuity, and unpredictability. Yet the pregnancy continued, an unspoken reminder of the deeper truth. Valeth carried within her proof that the conquered had underestimated both her and humanity. She had become a living testament to the power of adaptation, resilience, and hidden potential. And she knew that the child she carried would be a symbol of a galaxy forever changed. Valeth understood that the standoff was only the beginning. The conquered would continue to watch, to question, and perhaps to challenge humanity further. But for now, the humans had demonstrated their strength, and she had gained a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer a passive observer, a pawn, or a subject of ridicule. She was a protector, a witness, and a participant in a story that would redefine the galaxy's understanding of life, possibility, and strength. The humans celebrated quietly, not in triumph over others, but in recognition of what they had achieved. Valeth joined them, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. Among humans, she had found more than survival and adaptation. She had found trust, partnership, and hope. As the twin suns set over the colony, Valeth placed her hand gently on her abdomen, feeling the quiet presence of the impossible life within her. The child was growing, a living testament to humanity's ability to surpass limits and expectations. She vowed to protect it, to nurture it, and to show the galaxy that strength was not defined by perfection, power, or control, but by resilience, creativity, and the courage to defy expectation. For the first time in her life, Valeth felt truly alive. She was part of something larger than herself, part of a story that would change the galaxy forever. And humanity, still unassuming and underestimated, stood at the center of it all. The conquered had sent a princess to mock a species they deemed weak. They had instead witnessed a demonstration of human ingenuity, adaptability, and quiet strength. The galaxy's assumptions had been challenged, and the foundations of interstellar understanding had begun to shift. Valeth knew that the final confrontation was yet to come. The child she carried would be a symbol, a proof of possibility, and a spark that could ignite change throughout the galaxy. And she would face that moment with humans at her side, not as subjects or inferiors, but as equals, partners, and creators of the impossible. The stage was set for a transformation that no one, not even the conquered, could ignore. Humanity had broken the rules, defied expectations, and survived the impossible. And Valeth, the princess who was once powerless, now carried the key to a future that the galaxy had never imagined. The colony had survived scrutiny, defied assumptions, and proven humanity's resilience to the conquered envoys. Yet Valeth knew the final challenge was still ahead. The pregnancy that had begun as an impossible anomaly was approaching a stage where concealment would be impossible. Soon, the proof of humanity's extraordinary potential would manifest as life, a child that could not be ignored, a living testament to the power of adaptability and unpredictability. Valeth's heart raced as the time drew near. She had spent countless hours planning, observing, and protecting the secret. She had built trust with Elias and the humans, ensuring that every precaution was taken to shield the child from those who would see it as a threat or a curiosity. Yet she could not deny the rising fear within her. The conquered would not tolerate the impossible. They would see the child as evidence that humans were a species that must be controlled or destroyed. Despite her fear, there was also hope. She had come to understand humanity in ways no other species had. She had witnessed their ingenuity, their resilience, and their courage in the face of impossible odds. And she had felt, intimately and profoundly, their power to create life where no one thought it possible. The child within her was more than proof. It was a symbol of the galaxy's potential to change. As the birth approached, Valeth and Elias prepared the colony for the inevitable revelation. Humans worked tirelessly, reinforcing medical facilities, designing hidden observation points, and creating contingency plans. Every system was reviewed, every possible scenario considered. The humans moved with calm determination, confident in their ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Valeth watched them with awe. Their confidence was not arrogance, It was born of experience, of survival, and of a quiet understanding that they could achieve the impossible. When the first contractions began, Valeth felt a mixture of pain, fear, and anticipation. She was not alone. Elia stayed at her side, calm, supportive, and unwavering. The humans of the colony formed a protective circle around them, ensuring privacy, safety, and security. This was not a battle fought with weapons, but with ingenuity, cooperation, and determination. Humanity had prepared for every possibility, and yet the outcome remained uncertain. Hours passed, each moment stretching with intensity. Valeth's body responded in ways she could never have anticipated. The pregnancy, which had defied biology, continued to progress smoothly despite the strain. She marveled at the resilience within herself, a resilience awakened by human influence and nurtured by trust, care, and unexpected connection. Elias guided her through each stage, offering reassurance and support. She realized that strength was not simply physical, it was emotional, mental, and relational. As the birth reached its climax, Valeth felt the culmination of what had begun as a cruel joke by the conquered. The galaxy had sent her to mock humans, to demonstrate her inability, and to humiliate both her and them. Instead, she had achieved something extraordinary. She had carried life where it was deemed impossible. She had become a bridge between species. And humanity, unassuming and underestimated, had played a central role in that miracle. The first cries of the child echoed through the room, a sound that was at once delicate and powerful. Valeth held the newborn in her arms, staring in awe at the tiny being that defied the rules of biology and expectation. It was perfectly healthy, its features a blend of human resilience and alien heritage. And in that moment, the impossible became undeniable, tangible, and undeniable proof of humanity's hidden potential. The humans surrounding Valeth reacted not with fear, but with quiet reverence. They had witnessed miracles before in the harshness of their environment, but this was unlike anything they had ever imagined. The child was more than a life. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when limits were challenged, when ingenuity and adaptability were embraced, and when trust and cooperation were valued above fear and judgment. Valeth looked at Elias, her eyes reflecting gratitude, awe, and unspoken understanding. He nodded, recognizing the significance of the moment. The child represented not just survival, but possibility. It represented the culmination of human strength, the defiance of assumptions, and the quiet revolution that humanity had unwittingly begun. The conquered, of course, did not wait to learn of the birth through normal channels. Their surveillance detected the energy fluctuations, the activity, and eventually the undeniable proof. A living hybrid child, one that should not exist. Envoys were dispatched immediately, expecting to confront Valeth, to demand explanations, and to enforce control. But humanity was ready. The colony had anticipated this moment. Defensive systems, improvised yet effective, were activated. Communications were rerouted. The humans did not attack, but they created a barrier that prevented intrusion, giving Valeth and the child protection from immediate interference. The conquered, expecting compliance, found themselves forced to observe and reconsider. Valeth stepped forward to address the arriving envoys, holding the child carefully in her arms. Her voice was steady, measured, and full of authority. She did not beg, plead, or threaten. She spoke the truth, the undeniable reality of what humanity had achieved. "This child exists," she said. "It exists not because of power, not because of control, but because of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability. Humans are capable of what no one in the galaxy has predicted, and this child is proof. You cannot deny it. You cannot destroy it without destroying what is possible for all of us." The envoys exchanged incredulous glances. They had expected excuses, arguments, or submission. Instead, they faced the undeniable evidence of the impossible. The child's healthy presence, the calm confidence of the humans, and Valeth's unwavering composure forced them to confront a truth that could not be ignored. In the following hours, discussions erupted. Scientists, philosophers, and military strategists debated the implications. The hybrid child was unprecedented. Humanity, once dismissed as weak, had demonstrated the ability to influence biology and life itself in ways that no other species could. Entire doctrines, centuries of assumptions, and the very structure of interstellar understanding were suddenly called into question. Valeth watched, a sense of quiet triumph in her heart. The joke of the conquered had been transformed into a revelation. Humans, underestimated and dismissed, had shown strength that could not be measured by weapons, technology, or rigid rules. Their resilience, creativity, and adaptability had created the impossible. Elias stayed close, offering support and quiet encouragement. The humans of the colony, for their part, remained practical, calm, and focused. They had survived impossible odds before. Now they were witnessing the galaxy begin to recognize what they had always known, that humanity's power lay not in perfection or domination, but in ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. As the days passed, the conquered's attitude began to shift. Envoys, initially skeptical and hostile, started to acknowledge the truth. They saw the humans' ability to survive and thrive, the evidence of the child within Valeth, and the undeniable proof that the galaxy had misjudged an entire species. Restrictions were reconsidered, policies rewritten, and the perception of humanity transformed from weak and primitive to extraordinary and influential. Valeth felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. The child she carried was not just a life. It was a symbol of what humanity could achieve, a bridge between species and a testament to the power of defying expectations. She had been sent as a joke, but she had returned with proof that the conquered's assumptions were flawed, that humanity was not to be underestimated, and that the galaxy itself could be changed by ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience. As she held the child, Valeth reflected on her journey. She had arrived on the human colony expecting humiliation, failure, and confirmation of her own limitations. Instead, she had found trust, partnership, and a species capable of defying the impossible. Humans had taught her that limits were meant to be challenged, that resilience could surpass rules, and that life could emerge in ways the galaxy had never imagined. The child's first cries echoed through the colony, a sound that was at once delicate and powerful. It was more than a signal of life. It was a declaration of possibility, a reminder that the galaxy could no longer dismiss humanity. Every human present understood, instinctively and profoundly, that they had played a part in something extraordinary. Valeth named the child Alien, a name chosen to honor both her lineage and the human ingenuity that had made the impossible possible. As she looked into Alien's eyes, she felt a quiet certainty. This child would not only survive but thrive, and in doing so reshape the galaxy's understanding of life, potential, and the strength of the human species. The conquered could no longer ignore the implications. Policies were reevaluated, alliances reconsidered, and the assumptions about humanity shattered. For centuries, humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and treated as weak. Now they stood at the center of a revelation that could alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Valeth, once powerless and defined by her limitations, had become a guardian of this truth. She carried the proof of humanity's extraordinary potential, and she knew that the child she held would be a living testament to what could be achieved when limits were challenged, when ingenuity was embraced, and when courage met opportunity. Elias, Valeth, and the humans of the colony had changed the galaxy without a single weapon fired. They had proven that strength was not always measured in power, technology, or control. Sometimes it was measured in resilience, creativity, and the ability to achieve the impossible. The galaxy had sent a princess to mock humanity. She returned not broken, but empowered. She returned carrying proof that the weak could be strong, that the underestimated could surpass expectation, and that life itself could defy the rules of the universe. And humanity, unassuming, resilient, and extraordinary, had shown the galaxy that even the smallest, most chaotic species could leave a mark that no empire, no council, and no doctrine could erase. Valeth looked at Alien, then at Elias, and then at the humans around her. The journey that had begun as a cruel joke had become a story of triumph, resilience, and the power of the impossible. She knew that the child would grow to embody the best of both species, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope, and a proof that limits could always be challenged. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity had proven itself. Not through dominance, not through weapons, not through perfection, but through survival, ingenuity, and the courage to defy expectation. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Valeth smiled, a sense of peace and determination filling her heart. The impossible had happened. The child was here. Humanity had triumphed. and the galaxy, for the first time, had reason to truly fear and respect the species it had long dismissed.